Meeting is now streaming live.
There we go. Well, here we are.
There we are. Excellent.
Let's see who's joining us today on Connection with Spirit.
Oh, there we go. I'm just going to make sure I do that so that we don't get noisy on there. All right. Well, Deb and I were like so deep in conversation, we almost forgot to hit, join live stream. So I'm glad we did. Deb, do you want to, maybe for those who are new here, Larissa Russell of Creative You, and
I'm Deb Epstein of the Cosmic Dreaming Lodge. And we're live. Yeah.
We joined.
And we have one
together.
Person.
Yeah.
So far, one person has joined us.
Make sure to throw a comment in the chat or say hello. Deb and I were just deep in conversation on our topics. We don't plan ahead of time. We kind of go with whatever the theme of the week is, and it's almost always similar for the both of us. So it really hits. And so today we got into this whole, well, how would you explain it? Because I feel like we went down this rabbit hole and it's like, yeah, that's it. How would you explain it?
Well, first of all, happy spring. Happy
yes. Blessed Astara.
And Astara, yeah. And new moon is tomorrow. So just energetically, and we're in the astrological new year, right? So there's lots of stuff moving, and I think that's where we were kind of starting.
Yeah,
it's a lot of stuff moving. And so we were just kind of sharing the week of all the stuff that's moving, and kind of delving into topics that, feelings of what's coming, being prepared for what's coming. I read a little, yes, Elaine, you made it in time. Thanks for showing up. Yeah. Time is another thing,
Yes, that's another thing.
It's a whole nother thing. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm in the zone with Larissa in Mountain Time, but because of the time changes, the clock's changing, and Arizona doesn't do that. I'm an hour earlier, and instead, so I have to think Pacific Coast time right now. So yeah, time is a thing. We made it. But we were talking about stuff like, feeling disappointment, feeling our feelings, and using creativity, using our ability as artists to amplify that which we're preparing ourselves for. So there's a lot of people right now, and there's 5 people on here now. So if you're hearing what I'm saying right now, I'd love to see what's moving in your life. What do you feel happening in your life right now? Because there's a huge thing opening. There's a lot of energy moving, and it's that the time is like kind of ripening, and it's going to be like what I hear. I don't know what you're hearing, but like the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be this change happening.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of shifts happening.
A lot of shifts happening. So thinking about the things that you've been working towards and creating, you might start seeing it happening. And are you prepared for it to show up? And then it's the trusting that you've done the work, that you are preparing, and that other things will open up as a result. For me, it was getting in touch with a lifetime habit of creating from a place of being disappointed, and what that really means. And like from a ancestral subconscious belief system or pattern that is present in my life, that I started getting in touch with, and then seeing where it is in my ancestry. It's an amazingly deep creative exploration when you let it be. So I think that's a good recap. If you want to add to that.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely. And then we went down sort of a rabbit hole of exploring that in how it affects our creation and what we put out in the world versus the expectation of our society. And, their expectation is if you're creating, you must be creating at celebrity status, whether it be actor or artist or novelist or whatever it is that you're creating. And the disconnect to get there, right? And how do you make your way there if that's what you choose, if there's no support along the way? And then, or do you sell? That's unfair. Do you just retract? Do you follow your heart purpose, your core purpose, or do you follow the way society wants you to get to that status?
Yeah, you could say commerce. There's actually a book, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's from a long time ago. How to Sell Your Work Without Selling Out. Have you ever heard that title?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going back to the 80s. I don't know when it actually came out, but yeah, without selling out or selling your soul, how to sell your work without selling your soul, something like that. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, talking about being true to yourself, true to your own creative nature. And like where disappointment does leak in, when do we get disappointed? Are we creating for ourselves primarily first, or are we creating for, are we putting our focus outside? Who am I creating for? Am I creating for the audience? And can you do that? Is it possible to create from your own sensibilities what pleases and delights you first, and then worry about the audience later?
And I think that's where you often see, artists' work shift, is that once they start, and I know this was true for me when I was selling my work, that I started to shift towards what people asked for, what they wanted. And I started to hate creating because that wasn't my passion. I don't want to have to plan it. I want to feel it. I want to experience, I want to create from expression. And so when I was trying to create based on their requirements, it just ruined it for me. And then I gave up art altogether. It took me a while to come back to go, oh, no, I can just create what I want and say no to them. That's a thing I can do.
Yeah. It's honoring, like the places where we get to say no. And it's so funny, that you're bringing that up, because there's a certain time where, when you're talking about selling out, with regards to money, income, support, financially, and survival, and if someone's willing to give you a certain amount of money, does that come before, I'm going to take that and I'm going to, all right, it's not what I normally do, but okay, I'll do it. Do that enough times. Yeah, you're eating, your bills are getting paid, but then something else starts to erode in us. And we get to look at our own belief systems around the value of art and valuing ourselves and making our art. And it's the starving artist syndrome, kind of what we're talking about. It's really interesting. I follow Carolyn Myss. I think I say this all the time, but I just love following Carolyn Myss. I listen to her all the time. And she does this, she puts out a weekly archetype email where she does talks about certain archetypes. And I think it was last week, actually, or it might have been the week before, where she's talking about the starving artist archetype and how she met this guy who's an artist who was working in a grocery store, and they got to talking about his art and how the struggles he was having around it. And she went into this aspect of the starving artist archetype that I hadn't considered, other than just money, food, survival, whatever. But we have an artist within us that if that archetype isn't getting fed and able to express, because we're putting our fears of survival above our need to create, then that part of us starts to starve too. And it leads to lots of emotional dysfunctional things, and it could lead to health issues and all that kind of stuff. And so each one of us gets to solve that for ourselves. And by solving it for ourselves, we can solve it we're solving it for everyone else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important what you just said there about, basically the starving of the soul,
Yeah.
as opposed to like the physical starving. Because I think many people who start to create, and whatever that is, for somebody else as opposed to themselves, it doesn't feel like that true connection creating anymore, because it's so you've cut off your source of nourishment for somebody else. And as women, we do that on a regular basis. We put other people first all the time. And I'm not saying men don't do this too, but it's truly ingrained in us as women that other people are more important than us in our society. And so as an artist, well, yeah, of course we have to be making money, right? So that's what we're told. We have to, even though we may be dying inside, right? Instead of, and then you can switch that around too, to the, working in a cubicle, needing to be an artist, and you're dying inside because you need to create. And so then, yeah, what is that balance then to create from the soul, but then also be able to pay the bills?
Right.
And so, and it's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah, it's going to be totally different for everybody, and there's no formula for it. And I don't think there should be. I really don't think there should be, because if there's a formula for it, then it's not an art. It's formula, right?
Yeah.
And I know, like, that's kind of what I was playing with in my art recently too, is like, when you have, when I can let go and play and just have my art be about play, I'm much happier. My work is better. Whether I like it or not, right? I get excited about it, right? And then when I have I'll have some successes. If I show up and if I go after for the success, if I'm at the thing of like, okay, I'm going to do this piece, I'm going to paint, I'm going to set, I want it to be as successful as the last piece, and it has to look a certain way. Now I've just constrained myself. I've just tightened myself down. I'm not in play anymore. I'm in being serious. And the odds of me being disappointed by what I create is going to be a lot higher, because I got out of what delighted me. Right. And then there's something to be said about creating delight in your life. Right. And if art is that vehicle that brings you that, then why aren't we making time for that? Why are we, I know we have to eat. I get that. I get to eat too, and I get to pay for my bills, and I get to do all of that kind of thing. But I also know too that when you start honoring the creator inside you and start feeding that part of you, things will shift. Your dreams, your visions will come true, because that's what you are preparing for. And by you showing up, yes, brought it right back, didn't I?
Yeah.
Why do it? If this is what you want to do, it's like being committed to it for the long haul, and not taking no for an answer from yourself primarily. Right? That means showing up when you don't feel like it, because some days I don't feel like it. And I could go like, oh, I'd rather hit snooze on my alarm and not spend time with myself. And sometimes, I give myself permission to not show up, and it's I don't want to say calculated, but it's conscious.
It's a conscious choice.
Yeah.
As opposed to just letting it slide away, which is what we often do, right?
Right.
The things that are important to us is we let them slide away, because either they're uncomfortable or they're not valued by others, and we put other people's needs, wants, desires ahead of our own. Or, it takes that internal work, which is that uncomfortable again, piece. And when we start to explore through creativity, we have to look inward. It's the same with our, starting a business. As an entrepreneur, I have done more work on myself than I did in the, 40 years before it, because it was so, and I've done a lot. It's been so, but to keep going, you have to do that. To keep growing, you have to do that. And it's the same with creativity. Well, my business is part of my creativity. I enjoy building and growing and creating it. And
and it's an art, and it's an art, and it's about art, right?
And then so whatever the passion is, are you willing to put the energy for it? Are you willing to prepare yourself for what is coming? Because if you're not, you're dying anyway.
Yeah. And it's funny because that's what we want to kind of get at. It's, it's so funny. I feel like we're kind of picking this open a little bit, and it's there's some clarity starting to formulate within me. And it's like it's like anything we do, really. It's like, I'm going to pray to God for this thing, or I'm going to have a ceremony to honor this thing, and you just don't believe in it. And so, it's almost like, what do you think is going to happen? Why are you doing this ceremony? Why are you creating your art? Not that you want to get in touch with the why, but it's like, are you just creating your work because, and knowing some part of you thinking or believing that no one's ever going to buy it. No one's ever going to like it. It's always going to suck. People are going to hate it. So why am I doing it? And you're not doing it for other people, but there's art needs to get seen, right? Art, and we get to be seen as artists. We get to be seen doing our work. We get to acknowledge ourselves and do the work, and we get to find ways to continue to do it. I think that's like anything in life, though. It's like, I don't know if I don't know if I'm staying on topic, because I am. Again,
do we ever have a topic that
bounce, we bounce around, bring it back and bounce around, but and so I just bounced off the topic, but because I think I'm on it for myself anyway, is that it's almost like, do I do this in vain, with no purpose, with no vision in sight, just for the sake of doing it? And then when something happens, am I like, holy crap, how did that happen? Right? I prepared for it, right? I prepared for it. So what are we preparing for? I think part of it, what are we preparing for consciously and subconsciously? Am I preparing to be disappointed by not showing up?
Yeah.
Why should I show up? No one cares anyway.
Yeah. And are we preparing for what could happen, or are we preparing for what we assume will happen? Right? Because of how we think about ourselves, or we think about our work, or we think just in general. So if we think about what could happen, that opens all the doors, right? As opposed to what we assume will happen, because that's very limited by what we know.
Yeah. And we don't know what's going to happen. We're always on the edge of the unknown. As artists, that's part of our job, is being on the edge of the unknown, the edge of what was created before us, right? And we're always expanding consciousness in that way. We talked a little bit too about how the role of the artist in creating the change that we're moving into as planet. We're the dreamers, and the more we practice our craft, the more our imagination opens up to other possibilities. That's another side benefit of creating every day, right? Or showing up every day. Whether, and when I say creating every day, showing up counts, because sometimes creating looks like I'm just gonna spend my creative time with the painting I'm working on and listening to what it's saying to me, and I don't paint a bloody thing in that whole session. And that's just part of the process of knowing that I'm back in the conversation.
And I think what you just said there about showing up every day, right? And it's those conscious decisions, because we live so much of our life in the unconscious. We don't pay attention. We We don't have a clue what's going on. And like, how many times do you drive somewhere and go, no idea how I got here, made it safe, or whatever it is. You can get through the end of your day and not even remember what you did, because we're just like coast through it. And when we can be conscious and when we can make those conscious decisions, like I realized that my creativity, like actual painting, drawing, visual arts creativity, had gone by the wayside. Yes, my business is expanding and I love that creative part, but I need my hands on the paper, hands involved part of it as well. And that had gone by the wayside because I was being creative elsewhere, but it wasn't, I needed that connection still. And so I've now made a time every morning that I start with that. I start with that before I, and I have a 7 a.m. class. So, the fact that I can start with that,
that's commitment.
Like, that was important to me. But I didn't want to add it on to the end of my day and have it be forgotten or too tired. And so I'm like, I'm my best in the morning. I'm going to start with that. Get up an hour earlier, do that. And the difference it's made in the rest of my day.
Yeah.
Huge.
It's huge. It is huge. Yeah. Yeah. I have a similar story from when I was working outside of my studio, and same thing. I'd get up earlier, and it's like, it opens up your mind to more possibility. You start to see things differently. You see opportunity when you might not have seen it before, because now you're in creation. Your creation brain is open. Those neurons are opening up and making connections in a way that is very different than just like, oh, I'm gonna get up, have my coffee, get my shower, be in front of my 7 o'clock class. Yeah, that's creative, but there is something about nurturing yourself, or each one of us nurturing ourselves, right? Not looking to someone else to feed us. That's another thing that I hear too. I want to be fed. I want someone to feed me. And it's like, thank you, churches, because that's what church has done. My belief is, people show up to get fed, got to feed the flock. But we're in a time, man, where we're like, you know what? You know how to pick up the fork and you know how to put the food in your mouth and start chewing. You don't need someone to feed you. Feed yourself. You know how to do this. And stop looking to others to give it to you.
I think the pandemic really, really, made that like an option for people that they didn't even know it was there.
Yeah.
But I have options. I can do what I want. I can have more time. No, my day was like nonstop. And then it's like, oh, it doesn't have to be that way. I could actually seek out something. There's so many people leaving their jobs because no, I'm not willing to do that anymore. I'm not willing to give up my whole life to go to a job I hate. I'm not willing to, let's find a new way. Let's find a way that I can express myself and enjoy what I'm doing and get paid. Pay the bills, feed myself. Yeah. All of those things, I think we're seeing that. And that's part of the shift. I think the timing, things happen for a reason. And I think the pandemic happened in this to be a part of the shift. And even though some horrific things happened, so many people died, including some friends of mine, I think it's also really opened up a lot of possibilities. People who may not have even thought about creativity in any way are looking at things in a new way. What is possible? And I'm not talking about creativity just as art and, writing and those sort of things. Creativity in the endless possibilities, but also then the connection to the divine, the connection to soul, which is the ultimate creativity, right? When we have that connection, because then it flows. And I think that's been opened up for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that too. And, what we're calling creativity, kind of piggyback on what you're saying has opened up, and expanded, that we all are creating. We created all of it. We do create all of it. And so what I think too, what we want to be mindful of is how we're nurturing that creator within us, what we're feeding it. What are we doing during our days? Are we, listening to the news and listening to the scare tactics of this happening and this possibility and that possibility? And is it shutting us down? Is it shutting down our dreaming? And that's what we want to pay attention to. It's not like, I'm not going to say don't listen to anything because it's bad for you, but it's like, be mindful of what you're putting into your conscious mind, consciously become aware of what you're putting in there. Is it people just mongering fear? Because when we start getting full of fear, we're not in creation, we're in survival. And we get to find a balance of taking in what's going on in the world and then redirecting ourselves back to the focus of making the world a better place, creating it in a way where everyone gets to thrive. And there's a huge gap there.
And just what you said there about what you're listening to. And I always thought I had to be watching the news to be in touch with what was going on in the world. And I have to say, I'm much more in touch with what's going on in the world since I stopped watching the news. Because you can connect, right? And you talk to people and you connect, and you can connect to the energy, and you can feel. I may not know all the exact incidents, but I definitely know where the shifts and the what's the word I'm looking for? I want to say anger, but it's not that, but where the energy is stuck. I can feel where that is. And so I don't need to know the exact incident, although somebody's willing to tell you always, but but you can feel into, because we're so connected. So I feel more connected to the whole planet than I ever did when I was watching the news, which is curated for us to make us feel a certain way, to get a certain reaction so that we behave a certain way. And so if we can actually tap in to the energy, which when you disconnect from what's being fed to you and start feeding yourself, like you said, you can get that, which is also that connection, right? And then how is that expressed? How is that coming out? How is it showing up for you? Yeah.
I love that you're bringing this in, because we all have this ability to feel. And when we're disconnected from ourselves, we are truly disconnected from feeling what's really going on out there, right? And it's the only way you can really start to hone that skill is to start connecting in here and just let yourself receive information. We're all antenna, and we're making it up. That's our imagination. Our imagination is key in the use of our intuition. Doesn't matter if you're getting it right or not. Trust, you get to practice it. You get to trust it. The more you practice it and play with it, the more you're going to start opening up and really feeling stuff. And that, I want to address that too for a moment, is a lot of the reason we don't do that, empathic people, because we're hypersensitive, it's overwhelming to feel it all. And so, but that's where support gets to happen, right? You get to be a participant, a healthy one, in this collaboration, this gigantic art project that we're all involved in, and not run away and hide because it's got to be too much for you. You get to work on what the overwhelm was, and finding someone that can help you through it. So trying to do it on your own and disconnecting from all that is. That's all I want to say about that, I guess. And that's all I have to say about that.
But on that thread, yes, people who can feel into the energies I find that the more you stop trying to, or the more you stop fighting it, maybe, the more you stop fighting, trying to feel, the more it's not so overwhelming. When you can just be and the energies are there, I feel like I can pick and choose now. You know, not every single moment. There are times when I sort of get, whoa, I need to check in with that. But for the most part, I'm in control of my own self and what's coming at me. And I can open it and close it as needed. And it's not that you need to learn that, I don't think. I think it comes with being open to possibility, being open to the energy, allowing yourself first to feel, because you have to learn to feel, and then allowing what is to be is really an important part of that. We try so much to fit everything into a box. We've been taught that, right? And I mean, this comes from the Industrial Revolution especially, but I mean, before that was the church. We always are supposed to fit into a box because it makes it easier for everyone else. Because if you're not in that box, we don't want you. If you're in this box, you fit. And so when we can be like, this box, and we're seeing more and more of this box is not working. None of these boxes are working. They're not working for anybody. Okay, the 1%ers maybe, but even I don't think they're happy in it. It's just like this thing that they need to do. But the box isn't working. And so when we can sort of step out of that and allow what is supposed to be there, not worrying about whether we fit into the box or not worrying about whether somebody else fits into the box or not, just allowing it just comes back to just be, right? And yeah, because we get so caught up in what we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to be feeling, what we're supposed to be doing, what we've been told, what we think.
Yeah. And I think some of what we get to bring this home to ourselves and see, like, in our creating, where am I maintaining status quo? Where am I maintaining mediocrity? Where am I maintaining myself in the box? Where is it uncomfortable for me to go? Where's my edge? What can I lean into more when I'm starting to get uncomfortable versus like, oh, I'm starting to get uncomfortable. I must be doing it wrong. I better get back over here. It's like, if you're starting to feel uncomfortable with what you're creating, then you're on it. You're on whatever the thing that your soul is wanting to express through you. It is really getting, I'm going to use the word ego. And what I mean is that definition of self that was handed to us. That's not our authenticity, and when you start thinking about yourself as soul, think about yourself as spirit as well, because you are, you're the entire ocean and you're the drop.
Yeah.
And that's like the model of the universe, right? We're all one. We're all one mind, right? So we can't separate ourselves further by saying like, well, look at those bad people over there doing that thing. I'll never do that thing. You're part of a collective that is behaving this way. And so if you're not doing the work that you are being asked to do by yourself, basically, if you want to call it higher self, you want to call it soul, you want to call it spirit, whatever it is, if you're not doing it, you are a part of it in creating it, because you're not doing anything other, right? And so it doesn't mean you have to do something to stop it. Create something different. What do you want to see in the world, right? Be what you want to see in the world. Yeah, that's exactly it. And we often don't know how to do that. We don't know, what it is that we even want. We know that we're not happy with what this is, but what do we want? But again, if we can just let go and be, it'll be shown to us. We don't have to know the answer at the beginning, right?
And that's it's kind of that, take the leap and the net will appear. That is what it is, because you are literally like walking on air, waiting for that next step to be there, just allowing and not even hoping. You just know it's going to be there because you're moving in the right direction. And do I need to know what that direction is? Not necessarily. Does that mean I don't plan and I don't, like I have a business, of course I have to plan, but I also am open to where is this supposed to be going, and not the step-by-step minutia parts of it, but the larger, who needs this? How would this best be served?
Mm-hmm.
And then, but then also really just coming from a place of, and authenticity is not the right word here, but that place of, come back to being, where you just let go and stop trying to force it. Stop trying to force it.
Yeah.
Every time you try to force something, you just get resistance, right? And so if you can just stop trying to force it, then that resistance isn't there anymore, and you can just move forward.
Yeah.
Are we getting way too esoteric today? Are we like way up in the clouds? Are we?
Hey, it's like connection with spirit, man. We have 18 people on, and it's been pretty consistent. So actually, if you guys want to chime in, I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking about this as we're talking about stepping in. Basically, we're kind of evolving into stepping into your mission and what your soul is aching and longing for you to do, right? We like to elevate too. I think this is some of it. We'd like to elevate. And that's part of resistance. If I'm going to do something, it's going to be this big, right?
Go bigger, go home. Yes.
Go big or go home, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just, my soul just wants to sit and pray for the world. That's doing something. And nobody needs to see me doing it, right? My soul just wants to go for a walk. My soul just wants to connect with the earth, right? Just once. And all of these things that we're being guided and being asked to do, that we're saying yes to, they do amount to bigger things. But we take our focus off the bigger things because we're not doing it. That's where are we putting our focus, right? On the big picture. And is that a form of selling out? Selling out on what your soul is asking for you to do right now in this moment, right? I don't know how, like, I got this big hit that I'm going to, this is funny. This is something I've heard people say to me with regard to their vision. I'm on a stage and I'm talking to people, right? But I don't know much more than that. I'm on a stage and I'm talking to people. And so that's scary. Now I'm going to do all that I can do. Subconsciously, I'm going to do all that I can do to block that from happening. And so now I'm just kind of sitting and spinning, how am I going to get that vision to go? How am I going to get that vision to go? Meanwhile, your soul is going like, hey, I'm over here. Connect with me, please. I'll give you the first step. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's all we really care about. We just want to do the one step. That's it. And let go of what that image, just let go of it. If it comes back organically and you keep dreaming about it, awesome. Right. Yeah. But it's that forcing, right? I saw that vision. I got to force myself to do it, but it's way too big and I don't know how. And so now I'm going to chase my tail. Which we often do. And our brains then step in and are like, yeah, we don't want you to do that. That's hard. We like what we're doing. So then you're also fighting that, because it's like, no, we're going to tell you not to do that. That's a bad idea. Whereas when you can just let go of that and not see, oh, I have to do this to get there. No, you don't necessarily have to do this. You have no idea what the this is in between here and there. So you just need to take a step. Yep. And then the next step, even if you fall down, right? Even if you fall down, you may fall down, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've had a lot of skin knees, a lot of skin knees. But you just keep coming back to it
Yeah. To me,
Yeah.
it's like redirection whenever
Yeah.
I fall down. It's like, okay, well, that wasn't it. Okay, maybe I need to let go and not, because usually you fall down when you're trying too hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you can let go, it doesn't usually happen that way.
Yeah. And it's all refinement anyway, because what you're refining is listening, right?
Hmm.
You're just, and it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't work out, because it does on some level, because it's all
Hmm.
connected, right? It's not linear though,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes you need to have that failed experience
Hmm.
to get the successful one, and really understand, like, oh, this was successful because I
Hmm.
know what that failure felt like. I know that that's not going to work in this instance.
Hmm.
You know, it is like when you think about like inventors and stuff, how many prototypes does somebody make before they get like the right thing, and it's not about going after the formula. It's about finding the delight in what you're creating,
Hmm.
not to say that it doesn't get frustrating at times, right?
Yes. Yes.
Boy, am I speaking out of both sides of my mouth today.
Well, I think, perfect example. I was working 16-hour days plus last year, to the point of burnout last fall. I was so burnt out, and I'm in the healing industry. What was I thinking? But I just kept thinking I had to do more. I had to do more. I had to do more. And when I took some time off and then came back and I do less than half the hours, oh, probably way less than half. Um, I do more. I was able to start another business, right? Like actually two more businesses, but you know, and I still work less. And because I was trying too hard, it was like, let go and let it happen. Let go and let it go in the direction it needs to. Stop trying to force it in the way you think it should be going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's learning how to allow it to flow through you and
Mm-hmm.
be available when it does, right? And then it's also being available when spirit is flowing through others and showing up, in your path. That's that opportunity, right? Start to pay attention to synchronicities. When
Yeah.
you tap into your heart and what you really want to be creating, and you have no idea how that's going to happen, it's like just start showing up
Mm-hmm.
wherever you're being called to show up. Trust
And
it.
what you need will show up
Hmm.
for you, right? You don't get to decide what you need, but if you allow, what you need will show up.
Hmm.
They say when you're ready, the teacher will appear. And whatever that is, right? Whether it be a learning of some sort, or um, you overhear something in a conversation, or like it doesn't have to be a teacher per se, but just that knowing will come to you when it's time,
Hmm.
but not if you keep
Yeah.
trying to force it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The world is a very enchanting place when we allow it to be,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's a hard place when we allow it to be too,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. And we are in control of our thoughts. And
Hmm.
so we get to decide what, what experience we have based on how we control our thoughts or don't. I think we often think we either have to be like force ourselves to be happy, right? Oh, I'm going to think
Hmm.
happy thoughts and get through this, or we, go straight to the negative of, oh, nothing ever works out. It's, and it's in the middle of that,
Hmm.
because we are in charge of our thoughts, as in we can redirect to what we want. We don't have to force, though, because the more we connect and have an understanding, it just automatically goes that way. We know it's going to work out. We know things are going to go the right way because we've allowed.
Hmm.
So we don't have to always go to that negative, oh, it's not going to work out, nothing's going to happen, like all of those things. So we don't have to force the positive, but we're not veering towards the negative. We're allowing, and it just goes in the way it needs to.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a dance, right? There's allowing for the emotions without making them wrong or bad,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't want to do that either, because then we're stuffing.
Yeah.
right? So we want
Yeah.
to honestly express our emotions and shift and stay on target.
Yeah.
Shift and stay on target. I had experience the other day in one of my groups where I am just notorious for forgetting to hit record, right? And so I wanted to play my drum. I was trying to play with the sound. And so I was asking them, before I hit record, let's see if we can work this out. Well, it didn't work, right? I just couldn't get my drum to play, to be heard. So, oh, disappointed. It's not going to work. Or I'm going to
Oh, I have a
spend
tip
all
for
my
that, but
time.
we'll save it for later. But yes,
Yeah.
okay.
But
Go
it's
on.
like, no, let me just shift. Let me just shift and find some music. And I did. I found some music that was really deep and it was really awesome. But in the course of that, I forgot to hit record. So I said all of this stuff and then I saw that I wasn't recording and I was like, I did it again. So it's like, I could get mad at myself. I could beat myself up, or I can be in forgiveness, like, not to be, I don't know, sloppy about it, but just like, yeah, we all make mistakes. And guess what? I get to come back, I get to hit record, and I get to say again for the people who who needed the replay to hear what they needed to hear. They didn't get it in the full, version, because I couldn't repeat it, but I got the gist of it. And it's just, you get to move on. We do fall down. We do make mistakes. We do forget. We do have things that don't work out the way we wanted them to work out, but that's part of being creative. If I stayed in the I can't get it done and tried to force it, I'm not being creative because I'm only forcing one way, right?
Yeah.
I'm not like letting it open up. What are other possibilities? How can I solve this problem? Right? That's a part of artists do too, is solve creative problems in a painting. Like, I just came up against something that I painted myself literally into a corner. How do I solve this problem? One thing is, let me just take a step away. Let me see how other people maybe solve this problem. Looking at other artists' work and seeing like, oh, did they ever have a problem, like, a design flaw or a design problem or color issue or whatever? How did they address the problem? And from there, that can also spark you, right? It's really, really connecting with other people who are making art too. That's, creating the community around it.
Yeah. And I just, on that point, whether it's art or anything else, having that community, because that's where that amplifies what you need, right? Because you're hearing other people talk and you're, or you're listening to books or you're reading or watching or whatever it is that feeds into that you need, right? The direction is there and it's going to come to you in different ways. So maybe it is, a passage in a book. Maybe it's a line in an email. Maybe it's, even a line in a movie you're watching. So making sure that you're not, I don't want to say wasting your time, but you're being conscious about the decisions you make that are feeding that, right? So, for instance, I don't watch horror movies. I used to as a youngster, well, hating myself right there. I used to as a teenager, but I recognize that the brain doesn't know whether it's real or not. And what do I want to feed my brain with? I want to feed my brain with, do I love thrillers where we're solving a puzzle? Yes, that's creative to me. Do I want to learn more? I watch more YouTube videos than I do ever TV because I can learn so many new things. And it's like that takes me in the direction, right? As a creative, to learn new ways of doing things, new ideas, and then it sparks so many more things. And so somebody saying that isn't like, oh, I'm going to go do that, right? I did that when I was learning, but now that will spark, oh, I could do this because they did that, right? And so then it sparks a totally different direction because of that. Right? Back in the beginning, yes, I would go and do what they were doing because I wanted to learn and I wanted to sort of figure it out. But then you get to a point where you are just being fed and it just grows exponentially because of what you've allowed. And so you you just move and flow in the way that you need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's what I hear and what you're saying. It's like you're learning to let your authenticity come through your work, and that's part of it too. It's like, we're not in a vacuum. We can't create in a vacuum. And seeing how other people are creating, or even, copying, to learn through the felt sense of how did that artist create that beautiful dimensional image of a face and only use line, and really studying how the line is being used, how they must have had to use the pencil to turn the pencil, and how did they use their body. And then you practice that, right? That you're starting to now program your body mind to work in expression, right?
Yeah.
Getting up and moving your body while you're creating, while you're drawing. I do this because I do this a lot. That's how actually that piece behind me started. It's, I stood in front of it with a pencil in each hand, and I just started moving my body, and I was like moving together, and it's almost like right side help the left side, because the left side for me is kind of awkward, right? But like I always go, why do we have two arms if we're only going to be dominant on one? Like I always wonder about that. So it was that wondering that created that for me. But then since I started doing that, I've seen people who do drawings with two pencils, and it looks really cool. Like they're say a leaf or a tree or whatever, and they're doing symmetrical drawings using two hands. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Right. So it's let yourself experiment and let yourself play, because everything you do is just opening yourself up for more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And more doesn't necessarily limit you to just creative more, because everything is a creation. You don't know what you're blocking when you make the choice to choose from a place of survive versus thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, we've been talking about synchronicities, or we were before we got on camera. And just when you're talking about the two hands, there's been a lot of that in the last couple of days about, I think, Elaine, who's here, she has an injured arm, and so she's been using her non-dominant hand. And then that sparked some discussions. And then I was talking to someone not associated with my community, and we were talking about the different sides of the brain and what it releases. And then today in ritual, again, it came up, and one of the participants drew with both hands to create her symbol. And, so it's like, what is that energy? This is a segue. What is that energy that is coming from the right or the left? Right. And again, it's not the forcing, it's allowing. And so are we limiting ourselves by only using our dominant hand?
Yeah. There's a great book called The Power of the Other Hand.
Yeah.
Is it by Lucia Capiccioni or something like that?
Something like that. We actually, the same participant had it and was talking about it in ritual today when we were discussing.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
And it's a book I had years ago. Yeah. Yep. In fact, it might still be here. Yeah.
Along with drawing on the right side of the brain.
Yes, that one too. Yeah. So
all the books. Yeah.
So what are we blocking when we don't express fully, right? Like we need that full expression. I think that's what I love about large pieces, is because I can get into it, right? Whereas when it's tiny, I feel very tight and very, I'm not saying that there's not a place for small, because I do a small piece every morning. However, when I want to express, I want bigger. I want bigger so I can do that.
Yeah, I went from doing that big wall size piece to doing this piece the very next day. And it was amazing, because there was something that shifted in me that freed me up, because I tend to tighten up when I work small. And that I just, let myself play. But then the one I did the next day, I got all back into it again. So it's like, I said, I'm going to title this piece, Sometimes You Eat the Bear and Sometimes the Bear Eats You.
That's it exactly. Yeah, it's just allow, be and allow. I think that's
Make
my
mistakes
takeaway from
fall
today.
down. Yeah. Make mistakes fall down. Let it be interesting, right? Let it be interesting.
Just that comment, I often have people, oh, you should write a book. Your life is so interesting. And I'm like, it was just my life. But when you do things that are not the normal path, right? You don't always follow the rules and do all the things you're supposed to. You become unique and a curiosity that people become unique. Become a curiosity.
Yeah. Make it your business to be unique.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Make it strange. How are we doing for time? I'm thinking we must be getting
I was just
close.
thinking we should probably start wrapping up because we blow through an hour in no time at all.
I know. But one of the things I wanted to leave you guys with is like, just consider for a moment that if you are feeling like you're hitting walls or things like it feels like it's getting hard, or you feeling more and more uncomfortable, take that as a sign that whatever you are working toward is working, because it's growing and getting bigger. And sometimes that gets, it gets a little scary. One of the things I wanted to say, you were speaking earlier, and it did pop back, so I know I want to share it, is I have a friend of mine who has a tarot, I think it's a tarot deck, but it's definitely a deck of cards. And one of them, I think she has it tacked to her wall, but it's this little character and he's on a tightrope. And as he's walking the tightrope, he's actually spinning out the tightrope. So he's actually creating the tightrope that he's walking on. And that's a creator to me.
Yeah.
You're in charge. You are so in charge of your creation. And if it feels like, then you're doing it right.
Yeah. When you're uncomfortable, you're going in the right direction. Move towards the uncomfortable.
Yeah. Don't back off. Lean in, because you'll have a breakthrough. You're probably so close to a breakthrough, and it's just there. Just keep going. Going.
Absolutely. Well, any final thoughts before we sign off? If anyone has any comments they want or things they'd like to add, sometimes we get people who want to chat, and other people, they're just, I think, I don't know, we're either boring them or enthralling them. I'm not too sure. So
they're stunned into silence.
That's right.
Oh my God.
What do you have going on right now that you want to share with people? What you went mute for a sec. Are you there?
Oh, yeah.
There you're back. Okay.
Yeah. Nothing.
You don't have anything going on that you want to share?
Nope.
We just opened the doors for our intuition challenge. So I'm excited about that. We're going to do a 5-day challenge next week on tapping into your intuition, just to learn how to take notice a little more and start to trust yourself. So I would welcome anyone who's interested in that to join us. And I'll make sure the links are there. And if anyone thinks of what we talked about that I might need to link, like a book or a person, I always say I'm going to make a note, and then we get so wrapped up in the conversation that I do not. And so if you're wondering, well, you're going to have to listen or, reach out, and we'll do our best. But I do know we talked about a couple of them. So, but I do want to say thank you to everyone who joined us. I love doing this with you, Deb, because it's like we just have these amazing conversations. And for those who aren't privy, we do this weekly. We just share with you monthly. But because we're working on a project together, we get together and just have the most amazing conversations. In fact, that's how this started, was from those conversations. So that we're like, we really should be sharing this, because we have these amazing conversations. And and we never know what we're going to talk about. Maybe the couple minutes before we're like, what's been happening in your week? And what's been, and then it's like, oh, there's a theme.
Yeah. It's total improv. I love it too. I love improv. you know, it stretches us. And I think it's awesome. And all of you guys get to benefit too. So.
And we never have a problem filling the hour. So, you know, hopefully, well, if you're bored, turn the channel. It's not what you want to.
If we ever get to that point where we're just staring at each other and staring at all of you, I think that's when we'll stop.
Yeah. But until then,
I don't see that happen.
Until then, we'll be back next month.
Same channel.
That's right.
Same time.
Same time, same channel. Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Deb. And thank you to everyone who's been here today. And now I just have to figure out again. Oh, stop live stream.